What's up, everybody? It's Dan, Binder Boneyard, coming at you from the office. Beautiful Sunday, sunny Central Oregon. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for the likes, subscribe, shares. Telling everybody the Patreon donators are great. The Instagram subscriptions are great. Don't ask for much. I just ask you tell people, share this stuff, put the word out on the socials, and just try to point everyone in the right direction. So appreciate that very much. Today's episode is going to be about Scout 2s. I'm going to try and do the best I can from my memory to be as thorough as possible in half hour or so. We'll see what I can do. But the Scout 2 is the bread and butter of every international shop. There's just the most of them out there. It's what the majority of people want. They're the easiest to build as far as not having to modify a lot of stuff because they came already with the things everyone wants a lot of times. So we're going to go over by the years, desirability, features, things like that, some quirks, stuff. I get a little bit fuzzy on some of the specialty stuff like the Midas Scouts and that kind of stuff, but we're gonna give a pretty detailed, I keep saying we, but really it's just me. I'm gonna give a pretty detailed account for Scout 2s, and so we'll start in the dark ages and work our way up till 1980. So we'll just jump right in here. They started designing the Scout in the late 60s. By 66, the Scout 80 had shown the auto industry that there was a untapped market. So International was on top of it. 61, 2, 3, 4, 5. By then you had the Wagoneer had come out. So it was kind of a semi full size. And then I want to say, I think the Blazer was in the works but hadn't come out yet. And then you had the Bronco that came out in 66, which was, essentially a reworked Scout with all of the things that people complained about the Scout. The Bronco had tried to, address, like power and transmission and ride and whatnot, but I feel like the Bronco missed the mark. But anyways, so by 67, International was like, look at all this competition, we better start figuring out the next version. So the 800 was kind of that stopgap, with the V8 and the 4-speed and the different packages, but they were developing the Scout 2 long before its introduction in 71. I think they planned on bringing it out sooner, but they couldn't get it there. So that's why you have the 71, you have the 800B, and you also have the very early Scout 2s, which were in some cases referred to as 810s. So you'll see some people selling Scout 2 as an 810. It'll have interesting features like the data tag and line set ticket will be on the cowl, that filler panel under the windshield. You open the hood and there's the data tag on the cowl. It has the 2-bar grille, round headlights, of course, round bezels. The interior, the sides, bed sides on the inside are smooth. There's no ribs on the interior bed sides, just flat. The spare tire area has a little metal standoff to keep the tire off of the body. Little doodads like that. You had a lot of different options. You had AMC 6-cylinders. You had 304. I think a 345 was available in 71, but I'm not 100% sure. You still have the option of manual steering and manual brakes. So I've seen a few come through here with those features: manual steering, manual brakes. It had a Dana 44 rear end, and then it had the Dana 30 open knuckle Dana 30 front with drum brakes and a weird spindle pattern that makes it hard to convert to disc brakes. So really, they were using the same gauges that the 69 and 70 D series trucks and travel wells had. You started to see a lot of cross line sharing then, and I don't know if it was an indicator that they needed to start saving money, because things were already getting a little bit tumultuous with the unions and the auto industry. But you see a lot of shared pieces across those two. That was 71, and 72 was pretty much the same, except by 72 they weren't calling them 810s. Mid 72 they relocated the data tag. The line set ticket stopped getting stuck to the cowl. Things like that. But generally you still had the power steering, power brakes were options. Manual steering, manual brakes is what it was. And by 72, I believe the 345 was a standard option. I think the 6-cylinder was still what they were calling standard. Little basic stuff like that. They had, I believe, the sliding side windows became available. Low back bucket seats, the bench seat, the split bench that had the weird folding side. You still had like I said, same as the 71 half year 71, they still had the smooth bed sides. You move into 73, and that's where you see the vertical slat grille, kind of reminiscent of the L series truck. You saw the introduction of Dana 44 in drum brake, and you also saw the disc brake Dana 30. So been more than one 73 that's come through here with the disc brake Dana 30. Midway through 73, they changed the interior bedside, so now they had the ribs to help with sound and strength. You saw some updates in some of the other sheet metal stuff. They changed a few things here and there, but 73, you saw that they, I believe, at least from my experience, they did away with manual steering. I think every Scout after 73 had power steering, unless you special ordered it manual. But I don't know. That's a tough one. Just from my experience, I never saw a manual steering Scout 2 after 73 in any of my travels and what I've purchased over the years. They had the TorqueFlite automatic 345, 304s. They still had the AMC option. The 258, which I really liked. The 258 and the Scout 2 is a great combo, especially with a 4-speed, 410 gears, Dana 20. Like you can, got decent little crawl. It's torquey, it's light, gets around a little better, in my opinion. Started seeing color changes. They were adding, paint options. The 73 grille, you had the chrome round rings around the headlights, and then there was an up model version of that same grille that had a chrome surround around the vertical bars, which is very sought after nowadays. It's plastic, it's fragile. So you start seeing that kind of stuff. 74 was the same as 73 across the board, same grill, all of that. The only change was they did away with the Dana 30. So now it was all starting in 74. It was Dana 44 fronts with disc brakes in 74. Still had the 44 rear. They were changing the gearing options. You started to see more 354s and 331 gearing options. The single speed transfer case was coming out. It's the aluminum cable operated single speed. It's kind of a funny thing. You saw the introduction of the auto hubs so that you didn't have to get out and lock the hubs. They freewheeled going down the road, and then if you accelerated with the transfer case engaged, then centrifugal force would shove these rollers into position, and then they would engage the hub. They were later replaced with, I believe they were called Locomatics. But there are two different versions. You'll see the automatic hubs, and then they turned later models, they became Locomatics. But yeah, you just see interior updates. The 74 and 5s are probably the most sought after across the board by everybody. California and New York, New Jersey, they want the 74 and 5s because of the emissions testing. You don't have to have that done when you have a model that old. So a lot of the Californian trucks are, everyone's looking for that 73, 4, 5. Still utilitarian-ish. They had carpet options and air conditioning was coming out, stuff like that. But, they were still all metal grills. Whatever plastic they had was minimal, that kind of stuff. My first Scout 2 was a 73, and it had a drum braked 30 in it, and I blew that up quickly. But yeah, so 74 was similar, just with the axle upgrade, and then the power steering, power brakes, because you have really should have power when you have disc brakes. 75, you saw a grill change to the plastic overlay over the metal 73 and 4 style grill. So essentially it was the same, but it just had this chrome plastic overlay. You started seeing tow package, started seeing other little accessory add-ons, the winch bumpers, that kind of thing. The sway bar became standard in 75, if I recall my literature. And the sway bar being that flat piece of steel that joins the two front shackles together. That is not just flat steel. That's not plate steel. That is spring steel, like a leaf spring. And it is meant to be a sway bar. So, to keep the shackles kind of joined together, helps it corner, that kind of thing. Most guys take them off and throw them away, especially if you're off-road. That it detracts from the flexing articulation of the front end. Not that you're going to get a ton with those stock leaf springs, but every little bit helped off-road. So guys take them off and whatever, but they are helpful on the highway. But yeah, so 75, they became standard with that. You started seeing a little more aftermarket support. You can look through the necessaries book for the Scout 2 stuff, and you started seeing just all kinds of little add-ons and doodads for Scout 2s that were coming out. And then 75, for as far as internationals go, 75 marked the end of the pickup and travel-all lines. And that international was, still trying to make money, save money, whatever. So you saw the introduction of the Terra and Traveler, which are long wheelbase Scout 2s. They're 18 inches longer. It's added right in the middle. Typical international afterthought. Rather than do something new, they just scabbed on an extension to the frame, and the floor pan has an add-on in the middle. So yeah, had a short pickup bed. They still had the removable top, so you could go back and forth between the Terra and the Traveler if you were so inclined. It took a couple of friends to help you move the tops around because they are heavy. But yeah, you could a guy could go back and forth between the Terra and the Traveler, which I like a Traveler. But anyway, so 76, you saw that. You saw the grill change to a horizontal plastic grill that they only used for 1 year. Oh man, what else? Pretty much the drivetrain stayed the same. The options were the same. You could get some different spring packages. There was the XLC. Well, I guess the XLC was in 74 and 5, and that was their workaround for the emissions thing. Because if you weighed, or if you had a GVW higher than a certain number, you didn't have to meet emission standards. So they called the Scouts the XLCs, which is extra load capacity, which put them above the GVW requirements for emissions testing. So then by 76, they did away with the XLC because they couldn't, they used the XLC nomenclature, because they couldn't avoid emissions testing anymore. So in late 75 and 76 and up, you saw, the smog pump, the air manifolds, that kind of stuff, especially tuned carburetors. Yeah, you started to see all of that. The charcoal canister for the fuel tank under the hood there. But as far as drivetrain goes, they still had, by 76 they did away with the 258. So you had the 304, 345, and then you had the 196. I don't know. So now I'm second guessing myself. I don't know if they had the 196 option in 71 to 75 Scout 2s. I don't know if I've ever seen a 196 in an early one. I'm sure they're out there. They may exist. I'm sure somebody listening right now has one and is screaming at their speakers. But it wasn't until 76 that I saw the kind of reintroduction or prevalence of the 196 models. And I don't know if it's because of the fuel crisis, of economy and all that stuff, but they seem to really put the 196 out again. But they also introduced the diesel, the Nissan diesel in 76. Non-turbo, naturally aspirated dog of a diesel. Couldn't get out of its own way. Had like 85 horsepower. Smoked like hell. Fragile, failure prone, whatever. So that was a drivetrain change that they offered. And then again, California guys are all hot for diesel titles, because if you have a diesel in California, you didn't have to do emissions testing. So, if you're looking at selling your diesel Scout and you're in the Midwest, consider moving it west. But yeah, so you saw the longer wheelbase, the fiberglass top addition for the Traveler and the Terra. The Scout 2 was still chugging along, of course, like always, with the steel top. And 76, 77, pretty much the same. Grill change again. And then there was the addition of some special models you started seeing, most notably the SS2. And you get a lot of guys that argue about the SS2. From my understanding and from everyone I've talked to, the SS does not stand for Super Scout or Super Sport or anything like that. People just got that in their head from the Chevy SS stuff. But from what I understand, International never called it anything. I don't know if it was out of fear of being sued or what, but the SS was just an SS. It didn't have any nomenclature from what I understand, and I could be wrong. There might be somebody out there with more history on it than I do, but from what I understand, The SS doesn't stand for anything. But it came with, fiberglass or plastic door inserts. It had a soft top. There were varying packages also, like the Rancher Special, which was a 4-cylinder, 4-speed, 1 seat, a driver's seat, and that was it. And it was plain white. They didn't have any colors for those, but it was the cheapest Scout you could have got. I mean, it was bare bones, and that's probably one that I would have enjoyed, the Rancher Special, because that would have been the best to get around in the backcountry with. And then you had them all the way up to the Baja Cruiser, which had the fancy applique, had, the 2 seats, the back seat, spare tire. Some of them had spare tire carrier, but, had this fancy wheels, the off-road suspension package, which was different rated leaf springs, and then, like I said, the plastic inserts and the fiberglass, or the top, and the little covers that snapped over the defroster vents on the dash, and like locking glove box door, and just various things like that made them. I mean, they were definitely West Coast specials. They were made for the Southwest. That was the target audience, and so a lot of them ended up in other places where it wasn't ideal, and you started seeing Scout 2 or SS2s getting tops and doors put on them. And so occasionally a guy will get a Scout 2 and they'll be like, hey, why is my data tag upside down on the passenger kick panel? Like, oh, well, that's a dead giveaway that's a SS2. Or why does my dash have these funny covers over the defrosters? Or, why do my seats not recline, or not recline, but tip forward? Because SS2s had fixed back seats. Things like that, little add-ons. The skid plates on some of them. They had the plastic grill with the black slats and stuff. So the SS2 kind of was their sporty race package, because at the time they were getting into off-road racing. Sherman Balch and Jim Marsh and those guys were starting to race off-road in the Scout and gaining some notoriety, especially because they had the V8s and the wheelbase and things like that put them in a better position than guys racing CJ5s or Broncos. Broncos were such short wheelbase that the Scouts kind of handled better in the desert, but they were at a disadvantage because of the leaf springs versus the coils of the Bronco. But anyway, so yeah, 77 on the regular Scouts, you saw, horizontal plastic grill that they would carry for 78 and 79, rectangle headlight bezels, more crazy color changes, carpet interior options, more accessories coming out, like the tire carriers and skid plates and the Warn winch and the different bumpers and light bars and all that sort of stuff. You started seeing the tent that you could add to the back of the hard top, so you could sleep in the back of the Scout. You started seeing accessories like that. And then you saw another gear change. You could get like 307s now for better highway economy, which is terrible in town, especially with an automatic. But on the open road, 307s and an automatic, 307s and a 4-speed, you could do 65 at like 2200, which is perfect. So guys are getting good mileage. And then in 77, 78, you saw the introduction of the 4-barrel intake on the Scout. That was a spread bore, so it had 2 large holes and 2 small holes. And they used the Thermoquad carburetor, which was a Chrysler deal. And they were like 900 CFMs. So international engines don't move that much air. So the secondaries almost never opened. Almost never. Or they barely would open. So they actually would get good economy with the thermal quad, and then still have some power there for when you really got into it. I'm not a fan. I'm not that good at tuning them. They're kind of complicated. They're a little junky inside. I got a lot of plastic and stuff. And there's some guys that make it their lifelong mission to tune a thermal quad, and I just don't have that kind of time. If I'm going to be an expert in anything, it's not going to be a carburetor that they use for 2 years or 3 years. What else was of note? Really, 78, you saw the change of the interior stuff. The armrests got longer. The knobs on the dash changed. Just little different interior appointments, which the discerning international owner will notice that they became the same knobs and same armrests that Loadstars used, and S model trucks, the S series 1600, 1700, 1900 model trucks used the same armrests and the same knobs. So again, International was trying to cross model stuff with as many options as they could to help, again, save money and keep costs down. So you started seeing that kind of thing. But now, since there was no D series or medium or truck line, then they had to go to heavier truck stuff to steal parts from. So 78, 79, and then in 80 you saw a grill change to square headlights, all plastic grill. The engine, the Nissan diesel now became turbocharged, which made it like 111 horsepower or some 112, something like that. And slightly less doggy, but still fragile, still a poor engine choice. Just not good. I don't care what anybody says. You could be a diehard Nissan diesel fan. It's still, compared to everything else, not that good of an engine. So they discontinued the SS line in mid 79. There's, the majority of the SSs, I believe, were made in 78. But anyway, so by 80 there was no SS2s, or there shouldn't have been, anyways. So just the Scout was kind of on its death rattle at the time. They didn't make, I think they made 14 or 16,000 Scouts that year. They stopped making Scouts in October 20th of 1980. I believe it's October 20th. Mike Bolton, not the no talent ass clown musician, but the cool guy Mike Bolton, owns the last Scout that came off the line. And you can see it at a lot of the international shows. He brings it out. It's neat. Then you can get into like the weird packages, like the Midas stuff was all modified out of house by a company called CVI that did like the third row seat and the Travelers, and they were all like super plush carpet, and they had sunroofs and just weird captain's chairs front and rear, and then the third row folded down into a bed kind of thing. Like it was like a cross between a rape van and the 70s. Like it was weird in my opinion. Like I know I'm not everybody, but the Midas stuff just does not do anything for me. It's got weird plaid headliners and shag carpet and swivel front seats, and just weird. The paint schemes were kind of neat. I'll give them that. They did have some neat paint schemes that were kind of cool for the 70s, but the interior is just not for me. But yeah, that's really it. I'm sure I missed something important. I don't know, but that's the gist of it. That's the Scout 2 range, high points, low points, whatever. Anything outside of that is what I would consider fringe, and Don't talk about your sundowner or your hot stuff or whatever. Like, I don't know, they're rare and not that many people have them or have seen one. So I didn't even really get into that too much. But yeah, so I'm sure I missed stuff, and everyone will let me know when I do. But otherwise, that should cover it. So thank you again for listening in, following along. Hopefully it was informative, and I appreciate you being here. So till next time, Dan for Binder Boneyard.